Hello folks. Welcome to sunny Glasgow. Sunny Glasgow being a state of mind as opposed to the actual weather. That would just depress you. I'm here to talk to you about data, connections and social mobility, being about really my own experience, my own kind of case study, and how you go from emergency housing, temporary housing, to enjoying kind of luxuries in life, i.e. jet skiing around the Arabian Gulf and driving across America and going through Russia and Japan and the likes. But before I go into that, I wanted to focus your attention on Dilbert here. And Dilbert, I usually start a lot of my presentations with because he has a wee bit of humour, but also a little bit of truth. And he says here about test data, no being quite right and no matching the plan. And his boss says to him, well, we'll just adjust it. He says, what, falsifying the data? He says, aye, let's do that. He says, well, let's not get hung up in the definition of things. Okay, and that's what I kind of want to think about. Data, connections, and social mobility are loaded terms that mean lots of different things to different types of people. And I'm going to tell you about my interpretation of that. And I'm going to break it down into its component parts. Data, getting social, and being mobile. So first of all, what do I mean by data? Well, there's much more clever people than me that do a lot more with data and turn it into really amazing visualizations. There's TED Talks for that. Other people, such as our governments, councils, universities, take data out of everyday occurrences in order to translate and promote that. As here you can see from the Organisation of Economic and Cooperation Development. And then for some of us, our data will be our social data. How many likes that we've got, how many shares we've got, how many tweets we've got, how many steps we've made, how much weight we've put on. For me, I work for a company called Jacobs now. We're one of the largest engineering companies in the world. And we are looking at a lot of things as how to make kind of digital twins, not just of ourselves, but of our infrastructure and our materials and assets. And we're one of our partners, Trimble's, as you can see here, I've got a HoloLens on top of a construction hat, one of the companies that I've worked with on some of our projects. That's where I'm going to leave data, and I'm going to talk about getting social, which again means lots of different things to different people. For some people, it's social media. As Sam was discussing earlier, we can get lost in that wormhole. For other people, like myself, it usually involves a beer, talking about football, playing computer games, or solidarity just with your peers in general. Mobility. Some people, for mobility, is packing your bags and getting all around the world. For other people, it's being mobile. It's getting your phone out, looking at your phone, seeing what the crack is, and enjoying what's there to be seen. Now for me, mobility was all about getting from A to B, all right? And I started off at an early age looking at getting to A to B with my tours of Glasgow. I'm going to give you a snapshot of that. Here's my tours of Glasgow. Two neighbourhoods I grew up in, Rockhill and Temple. These two places were areas of deprivation in Glasgow. You can't see them anymore. They've been blown up, just like every other place I lived as a child. And that's not because of me. And Darren McGarvey, a quick plug for him, wrote Poverty Safari. When I read Poverty Safari, I felt like I was reading something that I would like to articulate, be as funny and as insightful as him. He's just a little bit more clever. And it's a fantastic book. It talks about the anxieties of poverty and the challenges that then follows throughout your life. And this was really going through Glasgow with the support of my mother. She helped me out and she helped kind of take me along this kind of tour in my own sort of safari and enabled me to kind of break that cycle. Which leads me on to my next step, which is putting all these kind of blocks together and discussing social mobility. The social mobility can be taken in two kind of definitions. This one I've got from the OECD. And the first part of that is about equality of opportunities, or intergenerational social mobility, i.e. what my mother does will then impact and improve my life. And I've got this little image here of a mother and a child, because this is where it becomes about everything being connected. My mum was able to break that cycle through studying data and information management. So explain yourself, how does my mum studying data and information management help me? Well, my mum was able to study that simply through a wee bit of venture capital and a bit of seed money to buy equipment and materials. No, she wasn't, I'm lying. No one's going to go into a housing scheme in Glasgow and provide somebody with venture capital. It was called welfare. She was provided with free tuition fees at the point of service. She was provided with materials in order to study, and she was provided a new deal by the government at the time in order to improve her life, which would ultimately have the positive externalities of improving my life. So that's what I mean by that. And as a 12-year-old, having a computer arrive in my house, it really opened up my world. Now, as I said, I went on a tour of Glasgow. I travelled around a little bit as a kid. Not too much, but enough that I wasn't able to feel part of any one particular community. But then when my mum got the computer in the house and I accessed the internet, suddenly I was able to feel part of an online community. I was able to connect, to my mum's horror, with people from Japan, South Africa, California, other places in Europe. Me being a naive child had no idea who I was speaking to. My mum probably had other ideas. But for me, I thought it was wonderful. Here I'd found a kind of tribe as such. As I got older, 13, 14, 15, I was able to use the internet for a whole bunch of other things. To support my learning, to support my engagement with school, to really see it as a kind of means to an end to help me progress. It was a leveller. But I also used it for other things, and my internet history would probably make my mother weep. But it did do benefits. I did get to university and progress. So if we look back at that original definition of social mobility, in effect it had ticked its box. The government had invested in my mother, and my mother had been able to support me. She moved us out to a nice new suburb, went to a different school, and here was me going to university straight after school. I thought I'd made it. I thought I was there. Good, go me, champion. But the reality of social mobility hit home, because it's really about relativity and self-worth. When I got to university, I thought, fantastic, here's me, done it. I'm now on the same running track as many of my peers. But then when I started to speak to my peers and see what they engaged in, I realised that many of my peers had gone to private schools, had tutors, went to societies, were able to go on skiing holidays, and suddenly I thought, yeah, I'm on the same running track, and we're supposed to be running a 200-metre race. I keep getting told I'm in a meritocracy, but I'm certainly starting halfway around the track in the wrong direction. So I started to feel a little bit down about myself, and a little bit frustrated with the system that we live in as a whole. And by the time it came to graduation, I thought, okay, right, I've done all right, I've got here. I'm probably going to end up as an overqualified barman with a typical kind of Gallus, Glaswegian banter. And then I thought, nah, I'm not going to settle for that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do what helped me out in the first instance, and I'm going to do what helped me out, help my mother out. I'm going to hit the internet again. Before millennial was being coined, I decided to be a millennial and go on the internet and say, how do you travel around the world, and go in a gap year. So I went and I typed in, how do you do it? Do I need jobs? What type of connections can I make? How am I going to do it as cheaply as possible? Now, when I finished university, I didn't actually go to my graduation. I qualified, I just didn't have the money to go. And I wasn't going to burden my mother. My mother had 2 jobs at the time and was under a lot of pressure just to help me get by, never mind enjoying and indulge in a graduation, where I'm sure some of you will experience at university. So went in, got myself a job first as a football coach, and then managed to find on things like couchsurfing and a worldwide organisation of organic farming and help exchange, a means and a mechanism to travel across America, down to Central America, sit in sailboats in Belize, go diving, and go to Spain and Portugal and continue that merry lifestyle, which allowed me to become a teacher. I donned action elbow pads and cord trousers, and I became a high school geography teacher. Now, before I kind of go into the many, many stories that I could in all these different countries, I could have 1,000 conversations about that type of adventure and that lifestyle. But there was 2 that kind of struck out when I was thinking about this topic in general, and 2 that actually kind of really made an impact on my life personally. One was at Ciudad Juarez on the Mexican border with El Paso, and the other was Doha, Qatar. So in Juarez, again, I just finished my stint in America. I'd contacted a school there, and I was hoping to go into Juarez and teach English. Now, when I arrived, I thought my English was pretty good, and I'm sure some of you'll be thinking, he doesn't speak very good English, it's a kind of weird form of Glaswegian. And they instantly chuckled at my initial reaction. However, they did like my enthusiasm, because in 2010, not very many people were rocking up to Juarez looking for work. It just happened to be one of the most violent cities in the world due to drug violence. In that school, I helped kids who had been displaced orphanaged, and were in difficult situations because of said violence. And when I was in there, as I connected with the kids and the staff there, I realised that a lot of the kids at that school were real kind of fantastic ambassadors for the school, because they went out to lots of really positive destinations. They would come back to the school to share their skills and go and work in a lot of professional services and do really well for themselves. And I thought, how can you go from a school which is literally dirt poor, i.e. no tarmac on the roads, where you see people with machine guns running by, to going and being lawyers and accountants and going to Ivy League universities, and then I seen it in the classroom. The kids clocked into online courses, so massive online open courses, the Khan Academy, and they really seen IT as an enabler and a facilitator. They had that human desire to learn and get on in life, and I thought that's fantastic and it's inspirational. It's a means to an end. The internet for them was a utility to improve their life. And then I went to Doha, which again I had a fantastic experience. I worked in another school, a very different school. This was a very wealthy school. They had all the resources that a teacher would need and that kids needed. And I thought, great, this is going to be really, really easy. My life is easy. And the kids, they're going to have an easy time. And one of the tools that I used there allowed me to kind of manage, track, report, and record on the kids. So we had lots of homework, lots of assessments. We would benchmark them. And what I realised is that we were actually collecting all this data for kids and then kind of using it to manage children and look at their performance and create a performance management framework for children, which may sound quite bizarre because it's something more akin to the business world and looking at operations. But that's what we were doing. And suddenly you realise that you're having conversations with 13-year-olds about how they're not achieving their benchmarks. And you started to see children being incredibly stressed and anxious. And stress breeds stress, anxiety breeds anxiety. And you've seen that in the parents. Sensible, clever parents would come in and be demanding that their children perform and hit their targets. And you would have to say to them, your child is 12 and they've got a long way to go. So I've seen how technology could be manipulated and misused. Now, the staff at the school were brilliant, the kids were excellent, and a lot of the parents were really fantastic people. So it was really about working with them to kind of come over those hurdles. And when I was reflecting on writing this up, I realised that there were some real takeaways here from these two contrasting stories. And the takeaways is what I realised is that information, the data that we collect, the world that we live in, whether you be in Doha, whether you be in Juarez or Glasgow, we really are citizens of the world. And that online environment is a global village. But in order to take advantage of that global village, in order to harness the power of that data and that information, we need to break down the barriers. We need to embrace inclusion. We need to embrace diversity. If people hadn't included me, and I say that, I don't mean just socially, I mean economically, I wouldn't be in a position I am today. And even in the workplace at the moment, I still see that push for inclusion and diversity, and I embrace it, and I believe everybody else should, because without that, you can't really take advantage of the IT and the technology that they've got available to us. So in order to get that, you need to get those human connections right before we can really enjoy the benefits of IT, data, and information. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.